everyone, it's Ivy. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a good old-fashioned BYOP. I am extra excited about this one though because today's Build My Own Palette video is in collaboration with one of my absolute favorite people in the world, Cam, if you don't already know them, aka Clovemas, and I will of course link all of their relevant channels below. Truly one of the most remarkable and special people that I have just been so thrilled to be able to connect with, and we're both content creators. We're both pretty new in our content creatordom. I just rely so much on their input, their insight. I love their videos. I absolutely think they are one of the hottest people that I know. We've just become good friends. And so when they approached me to be a part of Clovemas, if you don't already know, they are doing, I think it's like the 12 days of Clovemas and posting videos as frequently as they can during this holiday season. They invited me to be a part of it, and they came to me with a spectacular idea that I absolutely could not turn down, was to do a build your own palette video around the seminal album Jagged Little Pill from none other than Alanis Morissette. I am going to assume that there is no one here that doesn't know A, who Alanis Morissette is, or B, the album Jagged Little Pill, because if you don't, then I really don't know what you're doing here. But this album changed my life. It was the very first album that I had ever bought on CD. And I remember going to a record store, I forget which one it was, but it was one of those like chain record stores, buying it on CD. It was, again, my very first CD. I forget how old I was, and listening to it in the car on the way home with my dad driving. And literally, I must have turned eggplant purple when You Ought to Know came on, and you know what I'm talking about. I was mortified, and it definitely changed my life. But in all seriousness, this album really did mean a lot to me and still does. I know it means a lot to Cam and still does. And we both love it. And I just loved the idea about making a palette around the album and the color scheme. And so that's what we're going to do today. I have all of my singles, which by the way are really messily arranged right now. They are not in order at all. So it's going to take me a little bit of time to kind of just assess everything. I want to use my little favorite BYOP palette. This is my cigarette case that I turned into a custom palette. I love using this like any chance I get. It feels very holiday. So we're gonna fill this up with whatever I feel is appropriate. I'm not gonna limit myself to one size kind of pan. I just wanna be open-minded to whatever fits. And we are gonna channel a little bit of Ms. Alanis and figure out what the Jagged Little Pill aesthetic is. But I'm not only going to be thinking and looking obviously at the colors that feel like they fit with this album, and luckily it's a gorgeous album cover that has a lot of vibrant shades on it. I also want to think about the attitude, the time, the night, you know, when this came out, like the year it came out, what was vibing, what the like aesthetic was. If any of that, and I hope it does, sounds good to you, then definitely stick around. I would love to have you give this video a like if you finish it and love it. And of course, subscribe if you feel like hanging out with me in more future content. And so without further ado, let's build this palette. Okay, quick history refresher on what else was going on in 1995 besides the release of Jagged Little Pill. First of all, Braveheart had won Best Picture, and Mel Gibson won 5 Academy Awards for this film. O.J. Simpson trial was all over the news. It was completely sensational. Everybody was tuning in. The TLC video for Waterfalls had won the MTV Video Music Award of the Year. I loved that song. Seinfeld and Friends were the most popular TV shows. No surprise there. Your friend Brad Pitt had won the sexiest man alive. Match.com had just come out. There are now so many dating apps, but this was the first. Drew Barrymore flashed her tits on David Letterman. Amazon sold its first book. Toy Story was the first ever computer animated film to release. Starbucks released the Frappuccino. This was years before the pumpkin spice latte was all the rage. eBay debuted on the internet and is now one of many auctioneer sites you can use. And of course, Pogs were all the rage. I had a lot of them.
A few moments later.
Okay, so I wanted to do today's BYOP a little differently than I've done them in the past. Usually I kind of take you through all of my palettes, my selections, and then we build the palette together, etc. But I wanted to make this a little bit snappier, a little bit quicker. And so I have made my long list and then I've made my short list and I have my palette all ready to go. I will reveal it in moments, but I wanted to show you some of the shades that I pulled that didn't make the cut. So up on the screen, you should see my Jagged Little Pill cover just for reference. And in terms of how I started thinking about the shades, not only did I want to channel obviously the flavors and colors and vibes of the palette artwork itself, but I also really wanted to try and select things that felt like they could channel the time period, channel Alanis's vibes, channel the moodiness, the edginess, the vulnerability that came along with this record. And these are some of the shades that did not make the cut. Let me tell you why. So there's some shades in here that just felt a little off or a little vibrant, like this shade Moontide from Terra Moons, for instance. It's a beautiful, beautiful bluish purple, but there's something about it that feels very kind of too vibrant, a little too in your face. It's not quite the subtle edginess that I wanted, and so this did not make the cut. This Kelly Green that I depotted from a Kailav palette, it stayed in the mix for a long time before I finally pulled it out. I do think it's a beautiful matte green shade, but A, it's not the easiest to build looks around, and B, it just felt like it was a little overwhelming within the palette. Like, again, just too bright, too much. I had a few more matte shades that were kind of in this reddish terracotta family. These just ended up feeling redundant. We didn't need them. We were able to cut them. And then I again felt like we had sort of covered our bases in the ethereal green category. And so I had to cut these. This is Space Case from Terra Moons. I have been wanting to use the shade. I wanted to include it, but it didn't feel quite right. And similarly, there's something about Sour Watermelon from Looksy that I love, but it's just a little too like punchy and a little too pastel-y, where it felt off, so we nixed it. I was hoping I could find a way to make this work, just because, again, this is another shade from Looksy I've just been wanting to use called Stormy Morning. It's beautiful, but this lavender, as much as I love it and as much punch as it adds to the palette, it's not right. It's just too purple, too much, not right. And then I had these sort of like red, blue, brown pigments that I wanted to try to make work as well, because these felt like they could kind of channel Alanis vibes, but similarly, the colors just weren't quite right. This is Grisaille from Clionadh, and then this is Interstellar from Terra Moons. And both of these just got the axe. This was the hardest one to cut because I really wanted to include it. This, I think it's called Oceanic. This is Oceanic from Glaminatrix. I mean, look at this shade. It is so pretty. I love it, and I've been waiting to use it. It is this beautiful, like sea, blue, green, ocean kind of color. It's beautiful, but I have another Glaminatrix shade that I ended up including that felt a little more spot on, and this one just had to get the axe. So let's see where we ended up. Dun, 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 dun. All right, everybody, this is the official unveiling of my Jagged Little Pill palette, my Jagged Little palette. First of all, so many props to Cam for coming up with the best name for a BYOP video that I could ever not think of myself. Jagged Little Palette is perfect. This is what I came up with, and it was not easy. This was a lot more challenging to build. You may or may not agree about whether or not I really hit the brief, but to me, this really hits on all of the kind of color quadrants of the artwork, but it also ties to some of the feeling of the time period when this album came out. It kind of gives me, there's like shades in here that I feel like Alanis would have worn, especially as just like a one and done, very messy, very earthy, but there's still like vibrancy in here that ties back to the real, green, blue, purple, reds of that palette. It is this tri-color palette, and I did want that to come through, but I still wanted it to feel like something I would use and wear. And I think when you break this down into pairings or quads, it's a lot more approachable. Like if you look at it as a left half, right half, it becomes a little more overwhelming, but I love, you know, just kind of like isolating little quads and thinking about how I would work with them that way. And I don't love this arrangement. I kind of messed around with it for a while and ultimately I ended up here, but I'm still tweaking it. I wouldn't say it's final. Let's talk about the shades that are in here. There's a few mattes. There is this deep dark eggplanty kind of reddish brown shade. That's Dairy from the Shroud Cosmetics Batty Bean collab. It's freaking bats. This is a workhorse go-to shade for me. I felt like it was perfect because it really does give you those earthy, grungy vibes without being black, and I thought it would be a really great way to build depth. Then I have two mattes that give you more of those, you know, reddish maroon vibes from Colourpop palettes that I depotted. And then this terracotta shade, I think is depotted from a Kailav palette. I can't remember if it is or not, but that's just like a brown transitional shade that I thought would be really helpful to have. There's a lot of, you know, secret tan, I like to call it, within the context of this actual album art, so I felt like that worked. And then my spicy kind of red orange is this shade, which is called Sparks from Glaminatrix. The shade is so unique and beautiful, and it just felt like it really could kind of give you the edginess that you wanted while still being down to earth. It's not super duper vibrant. If I had Leon from Odin's Eye as a single, which I do not, that probably would have made its way into here, but I don't have that shade. And I think that this kind of gives you, I don't know, just like weird similar vibes in a way. I love it. Sorry, I know I'm overusing the word vibes, and Colin would tell you from Queer Bones that I'm probably overusing the word grunge too, but let's keep going. I do have this kind of a light sagey, almost pastel, but still earthy green, again, depotted from an older palette. And I have this shade Pisces, which is kind of a minty, seafoamy green. It is iridescent. I didn't know if I wanted to include much in the way of iridescence, but this shade really felt like it could tie together a lot of different worlds, you know, like it could be a really great inner corner highlight. It could be a workhorse within this palette and still tie very much to the kind of greens that you see. So that felt right. And then on this side, the most amazing shade is this one. This is Serpent from Glaminatrix. I've been itching to use the shade, so I had to include it because it really did feel like the colors tied so well to this palette. It gives you that transition between blue, purple, and green. It is really vibrant, but I feel like if you were to pair it with like one of these darker mattes, you could just make the most beautiful, almost Christmassy eye. Like I don't know. I'm so excited to use this. I think this is going to be a really fun shade to play with. And then on this half of the palette, I mentioned these two matte shades. We also have Mana, which is a beautiful kind of indigo purple blue from Dandelions Cosmetics. This is just a beautiful shade and it's very present in the album art. Had to include it. So beautiful. And I was really excited when I saw Oculus Lite in my options because, let me see if I can get it out. Because this also, similarly to Serpent, it just kind of bridges the worlds of a few of the different colorways. Like you have the indigo blue, the purple, and a little bit of that red, and it just kind of meets in the middle. And this is, again, just a gorgeous, beautiful single shade that I've been excited to work with. So I had to include that. And then the last two shades, this one is this is like my homage to Alanis herself. This is the shade Black Russian from Copacetic Cosmetics. When you put it on, it's a blue-brown pigment, but you know, lightly apply it and you get this like red-eyed, tired effect, and it just gives you edgy vibes. To me, it's Alanis. It's just Alanis on a plate. I don't know. Everything about the shade, there's like a very subtle sparkle to it, but it's not overwhelming. I love it. I had to include it. It felt right to me. And then the last shade is Figgy. This is Figgy from Lixie Beauty. It is this very velvety, deep, mysterious shade. It kind of goes from this dark bluish gray all the way to purple, and it's very subtle. It's got this, like I said, velvety texture to it, and there was something about the earthiness of this that again kind of bridges the gap between the blues and the purples and then the earthy mattes that just it felt right. So I had to include that one as well. And there you have it. This is the palette. I'm really excited to play with it. I'm really excited because I think it's going to be challenging, but also obviously really fun. That's the whole idea here. And I think there's a lot of different kind of color combinations that you could do with this. I would love to know if you feel like I hit the brief or not. And I am literally waiting with bated breath to see Cam's Jagged Little Palette. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what they do. I know that their collection is very different than mine, so I expect that these will be two extremely different videos. I hope you like this. I hope that you enjoyed following along with the palette building. I kind of curtailed the building itself just to keep it a little shorter and punchier. I will probably be doing more build a palette videos in the future where I take out all my singles, take you along for the ride. I just wanted to get you to the good stuff this time, you know, where did we end up and how did we end up there, what my thought process was. So I'm going to do some swatches just because, of course, I can't do one of these videos without showing you some swatch footage, but then that is really going to be it. So I do want to say at this point, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a like before you leave it. I would appreciate it. And of course, subscribe so that you can hang out with me in future content. We are going to have a good time around here in 2024. So please stick around. It is going to be a blast. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Happy Clovemas, everybody. Bye.